I never believed in omens. Not until the day the stagecoach rolled into Silver Creek and left a woman, crumpled in the dirt like yesterday's broken promise. The heat was merciless that afternoon, the kind of heat that turned the horizon into a wavering mirage, the kind that could strip a man's patience to raw edges. I was leaning against the porch post of Harlan's General Store, hat tilted forward to shade my eyes, thumb resting easy against the worn grip of my Colt. Folks milled about, as they always did when the coach came rattling down the main street hoping for letters, packages, or just a whiff of gossip from faraway places. But the moment the wheels screeched to a halt and dust billowed up like smoke from a battlefield, I knew something was wrong. The driver, Pete Hanley, a wiry man with more greed than compassion, heaved down a battered trunk, its leather straps hanging loose like ribs split open. Then, without ceremony, he all but shoved a passenger after it. She stumbled forward, her skirts dragging, collapsed face first into the dirt. I heard someone gasp. Mrs. Whitlock. The preacher's wife pressed a gloved hand to her mouth. A couple of ranch hands muttered curses, but none stepped forward. Maybe they thought she was drunk, or worse, diseased. Maybe they thought it wasn't their business. Silver Creek had grown hard like that years of drought and bandit raids will carve the tenderness out of a place. But I couldn't look away. Her hair spilled from beneath a bonnet torn at the rim, a dark river against the dust. I could see bruises clear as day, blooming purple and blue across her wrists. And when she lifted her head, blood glistened at the corner of her mouth. She tried to rise, but her body betrayed her, folding like a broken reed. And in that instant, something fierce and cold clenched inside me. I stepped off the porch. Boots thudding on warped boards, spurs chiming low. I felt the town's eyes follow me. My hand stayed near the Colt, not because I thought I'd need it, but because the weight of it steadied me. Pete spat a stream of tobacco into the dust, muttered something about not being paid enough to haul damned baggage, and clambered back to his seat. He flicked the reins, the coach lurching forward. Leaving her there like discarded freight, the woman lifted her gaze just as I crouched down beside her. Her eyes, Lord. I'd never seen such eyes. Wide, haunted, filled with terror that wasn't born of the moment but of weeks, months, maybe years of cruelty. She flinched when my shadow fell across her, tried to crawl backward as if expecting another blow. Easy, I said, voice low, steady, the way I spoke to spooked horses. You're safe now. She shook her head, lips trembling. No one can keep me safe. Something inside me snapped, a taut string pulled too long. I slid an arm beneath her shoulders, the heat of her skin startling against my calloused hand. She weighed nothing, too light, too fragile, like she'd been whittled down by suffering. As I lifted her, I felt her stiffen, breath hitching as though even kindness hurt. My chest tightened. I'll not let anyone lay a hand on you again, I whispered, close enough that only she could hear. That's a promise. Her eyes flickered doubt and hope colliding like storm and sunlight. Then they fluttered shut. She sagged against me, unconscious. The crowd stirred uneasily. What's she doing here, McCall? Someone called. Another muttered about trouble following skirts. I ignored them. Let them wag their tongues. The woman needed a doctor, not their gossip. I carried her down the street. Dust rising around my boots, past the saloon doors that creaked lazily in the hot wind. I could feel every gaze boring into my back, but none dared block my path. At the door of Doc Harlan's office, I kicked twice, sharp. The old doctor opened up, spectacles perched on the end of his nose, and frowned when he saw what I held. Lord Almighty, Ethan, he muttered. Bring her in. Inside, the air smelled of iodine and tobacco. I laid her gently on the cot while Harlan barked orders at his assistant. Young Tommy Green, bandages, clean water, whiskey. My hands clenched into fists as Harlan unbuttoned her sleeve and revealed more bruises, deep and cruel. He pressed along her ribs, nodding grimly. 2, maybe 3, cracked ribs. Dehydrated, concussion, by the look of it. Whoever did this? He trailed off, but his eyes met mine, and I knew he was thinking the same thing. Men like that didn't deserve mercy. She live? I asked. If she gets rest, food, and care, yes. But she's been through hell. I stayed until color crept faintly back into her cheeks. When she stirred, eyes flickering open, I was still at her side. She studied me as though weighing whether I was another danger. My heart ached at the mistrust carved into her every movement. "Name's Ethan McCall," I said softly. "This is Doc Harlan. You're safe here." Her lips parted. "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Whitmore." The syllables trembled like fragile glass. Behind me, the door creaked, and Mrs. Abernathy bustled in round, formidable gray hair pulled tight. She carried a basket of bread and broth, her eyes sharp as hawks. "So this is the poor soul they dropped in the street? Mercy me." "Sit down, McCall, before you scare her more with that scowl of yours." I almost smiled despite myself. If anyone could put order to chaos, it was Mrs. Abernathy. She had been housekeeper at my ranch for near a decade, ever since I lost my wife and child. She'd seen me at my worst, and she wasn't afraid to box my ears if I deserved it. Clara tried to sit, but pain twisted her features. I reached to steady her, but she flinched, clutching the blanket to her chest. That cut deeper than any knife. I dropped my hand, forcing gentleness into my tone. "No harm meant. You need rest. Let Mrs. Abernathy fuss over you a bit. She's stubborn as a mule, but she'll see you right." For a long moment, her eyes searched mine. Then she gave the faintest nod. I didn't leave until Doc all but shoved me out, muttering about patients needing quiet, not hulking cowboys hovering like storm clouds. On the street again, the sun was sinking, bleeding red across the horizon. I leaned against the hitching post, head bowed. I hadn't asked for this. I had my ranch, my cattle, my ghosts. I'd built walls high enough that no one could climb them. But when I lifted Clara from the dust, I knew, Lord help me, wasn't going to walk away. That night, Silver Creek buzzed. In the saloon, cards slapped against tables, whiskey flowed, and tongues wagged about the stranger. Some said she was a runaway bride, others whispered darker tales. I heard enough to make my blood boil, but I kept my silence. Men in this town loved a story more than the truth. What I couldn't silence was the memory of her eyes. Not just fear, but that flicker's maul, stubborn like a candle, refusing to die in the wind. I knew that flicker. I'd once had it myself, before life tried to snuff it out. And maybe, just maybe, I was fool enough to try and guard it now. I thought the desert heat had baked most of the softness out of me, but it turned out I still had room for surprises. The first surprise was seeing Clara stand on her own 2 feet again, chalk in hand, in front of that little weather-beaten schoolhouse. The roof leaked when it rained. The floorboards creaked if more than 2 children shifted at once. But to her it might as well have been a cathedral. She spoke with patience, corrected with kindness, and when she laughed, even the most restless boy stopped tapping his boots. Watching her there, I realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was reclaiming something. But Silver Creek wasn't a place that gave away respect freely. The women at church whispered when she walked past, whispers sharp as needles, living at McCall's ranch. No better than a saloon girl, the men muttered in the saloon. Half jealousy, half contempt. I let the words roll off me most days. But once, when old Jacobson sneered too loud, I had to put him flat on his back in the dirt outside. Clara heard about it the next day, and instead of thanking me, she scolded me. "You can't fight every whisper, Ethan," she said, her eyes stern. Though I saw the faintest flicker of warmth there, too. "Let me stand or I'll never belong." So I tried. Lord help me. I tried to stand back. But when she walked across the street carrying her basket of primers, and children ran to clutch her skirts, I found myself following her shadow with my eyes, hand resting against my Colt, just in case the world remembered to be cruel. One morning I brought her out to the corral. "Time you learned to ride proper," I said. She stiffened, looking at the mare, pawing the dirt. But I kept my tone easy. "If you're to make your way here, you need more than a strong will. You need a horse under you." She hesitated, then let me lift her into the saddle. The first few steps were shaky, But then the wind caught her hair, and she tilted her face to the sun. A laugh spilled out, uncertain, raw, but real. That sound lodged itself in my chest like a bullet, only sweeter. Another time, I pressed a revolver into her hands. She flinched, tried to hand it back. "I don't want this." "You don't have to want it," I said gently, "but you'll damn well know how to use it. No man will ever take your choice away again." She bit her lip, raised the gun, and fired. The bottle on the fence post shattered. She stared at her hands in disbelief. I didn't cheer, didn't smile, just said, "You're stronger than you think." And the way her eyes lingered on me told me she almost believed it. Yet peace never lasts long out here. The desert teaches you that. Rumors drifted in on the wind Edward Kane alive, drinking in Tucson, hiring men who had no loyalty but to whiskey and coin. I didn't tell Clara. She'd been through enough without that shadow darkening her steps. But at night, when the house grew quiet, I'd walk the fence line with my lantern swinging, eyes on the horizon, waiting for ghosts, and ghosts came. The first sign was a horse tethered outside the saloon I didn't recognize Leak. Well kept, Eastern stock. Inside, at the poker table, sat a man with a smile sharp as a knife and eyes that slid over the room like oil. When he looked at me, recognition settled heavy in my gut. Edward Kane. He was thinner than I remembered, meaner too. With the slick polish of a man who thought charm was just another weapon, he leaned back, cards in hand. "McCall," he drawled, voice smooth as snake venom. "I hear you've been playing guardian to what belongs to me." My hand twitched near my Colt, but I kept it holstered. The saloon was too full, too hungry for spectacle. I stepped closer, low enough for him alone. "She was never yours. You touch her, I'll bury you so deep the coyotes won't sniff you out." He only smiled, lips curling. "We'll see." I left before my temper boiled over. But the sound of his laugh followed me out into the night, cold and certain. From that moment, the days turned taut as wire. I said nothing to Clara, but she saw me sharpening the fences, checking my rifle, walking the yard longer. She touched my arm once, light as a feather. "Ethan," she whispered, "whatever storm you see coming, don't shut me out of it. I can face it with you." I wanted to tell her everything, how she'd become more than a duty, how I couldn't breathe without thinking of her. But the words stuck. I'd lost a wife once. I knew the pain of holding too tight, only to be left with empty arms. Better to guard her in silence than to burden her with the weight of my heart. It was a child's cry that shattered the silence. Clara had stayed late at the schoolhouse, tidying slates, when Edward slipped in through the back. Later, she told me she felt the shift before she saw him, the air tightening like a trap. He cornered her by the chalkboard, voice slick with poison, promising forgiveness if she returned, threats if she refused. She called out, her voice carrying through the open window. Two boys playing marbles outside heard and ran screaming for help. I came thundering on horseback, fury burning through me. The schoolhouse door burst open, and there he was, Edward Kane, revolver in hand, Clara pale against the wall. He fired first. Splinters flew from the doorframe beside me. I dove, rolled, fired back. My shot struck his shoulder, spinning him, but he raised his gun again. And then I saw her, Clara, chalk clenched like a blade, eyes locked on mine, pleading. That moment froze me. I lunged, knocked him down, my fist slamming into his jaw. Rage roared in my ears. "You hurt her," I spat, pressing the barrel of my Colt to his skull. "I should end you here." Clara's hand caught mine, trembling, steady. "Don't!" she begged, voice breaking. "If you do, you'll carry him forever. Let him go, Ethan, please." Her voice cut through the blood pounding in my head. I lowered the gun. With one last shove, I dragged Edward to the waiting men. Put him on the next stage out. If he ever comes back, he won't leave breathing. They hauled him away, cursing, broken but alive. Clara sagged into me, tears streaking her face. I held her tight, and in that moment, I knew she wasn't just someone I'd sworn to protect. She was the only thing keeping me human. The town quieted after that. Clara moved into the little teacher's cottage beside the school, her pride demanding her own space. But every morning I found reasons to walk past, to leave wildflowers on her step, to linger in the doorway while she smiled at me, eyes softer than any words. And on Christmas Eve, with snow frosting the rooftops and lantern lights spilling warm across the chapel, I knelt beside my mother's old piano, heart hammering, and asked her to marry me. She covered her face with her hands, then with tears streaming down her cheeks, whispered yes. The church was full that night, students singing carols off-key. Mrs. Abernathy fussing with Clara's veil, Doc Harlan muttering about fools in love. When I kissed her, the town cheered, and for the first time in years, I believed in something brighter than survival. We built a life from ashes to children with Clara's eyes and my stubborn jaw. A ranch that flourished, a school that grew. Silver Creek learned not just to endure, but to hope. Because a broken woman and a scarred cowboy had chosen each other and refused to let darkness have the last word, and though I'd never trusted omens, I knew one thing true. The day I carried her from the dust, I found the peace of my soul I thought I'd buried long ago.